Thanks, Nomeshji, and thanks, Abhishek. Like Nomeshji said, it's wonderful to have this discussion in this institution, which many decades back would have been quite a tough thing. Having been part of the IIT system, so I know how long we have come in being able to bring back our thought systems. So today, I will just briefly give a glimpse. I would say I'm carefully using the word glimpse, because a deep dive will require, a full day, which in any case, Shankar Garu will, do around the theory of state, which forms a part of it. The objective is to give a glimpse into the concepts that have shaped this civilization for a few millennia. Now, what is unmistakable is it has shaped. What has happened in the last 200 years is a discontinuity. Now we are at a stage where we have to take decisions as to how we will move forward. But it is imperative that we recognize that there is a past, a deep past, a thriving and sustained past that was shaped by certain concepts which put together formed a certain worldview. And what is that? Move to the next slide, please. Can I move here or is it? Yeah, okay. So the point is that the IKS or the Indian knowledge systems, the terminology is new, of course, but the concept has been there. It's the bedrock of Bharatiya Samaj. And it consists of a few foundational elements. The individual, what does the individual do, has done in this civilization is pursued Purushartha, managed Triguna. Triguna is, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Has built Trishakti, Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti. Has developed Panchakosha, Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. And with Shraddha and Bhakti. These are the operating concepts of the civilization from an individual standpoint. Irrespective of whether we agree or not, this is how the civilization has lived for a few millennia. And it's also necessary to know that using this, the civilization has thrived. It has built what it built. We had the best literature. We had the best intellectual thought system. There is hardly anything that can surpass the intellectual achievement of Panini and Ashtadhyayi. So you touch a field, and India touched it, well, including mathematics. We almost touched calculus, with the Kerala School of Mathematics. But the guiding principles were these for the individual. Not just that, because the individual pursued this, the civilizational features were also different. What are those civilizational features that are different? So we'll see that also. Fundamentally, any new system that we build must serve the society that is still operating in this paradigm. Large 90% of the society is still operating in that paradigm. Point number one. Point number two, if we have to build systems that serves this society, then the systems also must draw from these concepts. So IKS, we need public systems for IKS. Consequently, we need public systems from IKS. And what are these public systems? The state, the institutions, the community, the education, and the economy. In this, the state is, where the state, the elements of the state have absolute control. The public institutions, it will have a partial influence. The community, it must have less influence, but should know enough of the community to be able to serve it. The education has to not create disharmony between the culture and the, the policies or the future pursuits. And the economy, which in the past was part of the community itself, which today has moved out of the community, also now needs to not disturb but be in, harmony with it. Next slide, please. So it's also important to reflect upon what are the civilizational differences that we have. Our theory of change, our theory of sustainability, our theory of what is progress, and our theory of time, our theory of what is joy, are all different as a consequence of the previous set of concepts that I listed. A why and how of it will take half a day, which we will do at some point in time. Not just that, the paradigm of knowledge creation and knowledge representation are also different. There is a wonderful paper by Professor Ruddam Narasimha, who was the director of National Aerospace Laboratory, and he's answered, the paper is, the second half of Joseph Needham's question. But what it answers is, what is the knowledge paradigm difference between India and the West? And it's a very technically well presented argument. So we have moved from one paradigm of knowledge representation to another paradigm. So the modern knowledge paradigm is model based thinking, whereas the paradigm of thought in India was sutra based thinking, and there is a contrast between the two. Now we have to harmonize the two. As a consequence of all this, civilizations differ in two ways. In one way primarily, it will have its what is a problem, or the problem set between civilizations will be different. Not just the solution space. Problems, what is a problem itself will be significantly different. Secondly, how the problem is solved will also be different. Three, what is an acceptable solution is also different. I mean, if people are computer science students, you can formulate a knapsack problem, using this formulation. What is a problem is different. How to solve it is different. What is an acceptable solution was also different. Now we are operating in two different paradigms. A set of educated people are operating in one paradigm, and the rest of the society is operating another paradigm, and public systems need to be conscious of these two things. Consequently, the civilization is far more malleable, maintainable. There is more diversity because of the previous set of concepts that a Purushartha pursuing society is what strives for greater diversity. There is more decentralization as a consequence of that. There is more autonomy for an individual and the community as a consequence of that. So now we are building systems. If the last 200 years of systems have been in antagonism to these concepts, and now we have to move to a different configuration. Next slide, please. So I'll quickly give a glimpse and move. This is how you can visualize the Indian society as a collection of nodes, and as a network of nodes, where nodes are communities, edges are relationships between communities. And both the nodes and the relationships have a unique characteristic. Every community is defined by a set of performances, a set of things that it consumes, a unique aesthetic, a powerful set of rituals or social practices, and a pursuit of the sacred. This is common to any society in India. If you go back to a Peruvian society, which is pre-modern, this will be common to even them. Well, why? If you go to Europe, you will also see that there is no society which does not have its own set of practices, rituals, sacred, unique aesthetic, and a performance set. A performance is for a boatman, crossing, being able to boat is a set of performance. So for a modern sportsman, there are different set of performances. The difference between India and the West today is that this was configured not for the individual, but for a community. And that's why such a network is possible. In a mass society, this network will be so complex that you will not even be able to, it will be a non-planar graph, if you know the graph theory. So to serve such a society, you need to understand what this configuration is, how to serve the society. Next slide, please. So consequently, the joy is different in India. You can just focus on the right side slide. You know, there are 5 kinds of joys. There is a joy that comes from consuming something. There is a joy that comes from performance, that is you doing. For instance, for an artist, there is an unmistakable joy from the sheer performance of the art. Whether it brings money or not, it's also important. But there is this joy that cannot be denied. Similarly, for a scientist to be able to build a successful model, there is joy. So there is a performing joy, there is a consuming joy, which is universal. The difference in India is how the joy is shifted to the aesthetic dimension and the socio-religious, ritualistic dimension and the sacred dimension. This is the difference in India. Whereas in the modern world, the performing and consuming joy is of a higher order, whereas the social organization, the ritual, and the sacred, those and the aesthetics associated with that are less important. Consequently, you have a public system that anchors on consumption and performance, and a society that is valuing 3 other dimensions of joy that the public systems may or may not be serving consciously. This dichotomy or the disharmony needs to be resolved. So the Indian life, the font is a little small, so I will read it out. At the bottom, the orangish that is there, you can see. It has life organized at 8 levels. The tattva, we call it, or the universal realities that the community accepts, not what we tell somebody. The philosophy or the arguments that it has created around the axioms of the society. Then certain operating principles. Then the social organization. Social organization is a consequence of what we call as the tattvas, the siddhantas, and the sutras, or in English, put it in English, the universal truth axioms, the philosophy and the operating principles. That determines the social organization. From there, you see rest of it, what you see, the traditions and practices, customs and rituals of a society. But if you don't understand the first 4 parts and only see the remaining part, and then you see the society as a collection of mere individuals, then you are not appreciating the society for what it is. And this is the problem right now in India. Next slide, please. So we'll straight go to the next slide, Abhishek. So bring back one more click. So I have just listed a set of concepts that has shaped all these things. In India, life is organized at 3 levels. Everything in life must be organized at what we call as Adhibhautika, Adhidaivika, and Adhyatmika. Everybody knows these concepts, but its import is not known. What is the implication of it? There is nothing in life that is not touched by these 3. For instance, let's say something as mundane as speech. Speech has 4 components. Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikhari, according to the philosophy. Para is that comes from the universal truth. Vaikhari is the final expression of it. Even speech, the philosophy has categorized at 4 levels. Human body, the virtual, experiential human body is divided into Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya, in consonance with Adhibhautika, Adhyatmika, and Adhidaivika. The pursuit of an individual, Dharmartha, Kama, Moksha, is also in consonance with Adhidaivika, the 3 levels. Well, even something like a strategy of execution, Samadhana, Bheda, Danda, is also in line with these 4. The universal dynamic of Srishti, Sthiti, Laya, that is creation, sustenance, and dissolution, is also in line with this because it is anchored by a concept that is less known called Rita. The reason why I am putting this across is to say that there is a consistency in the way life is represented in every aspect. So there is no aspect that has only Adibhautika. Every aspect has Adibhautika, Adidaivika, and Adhyatmika. That universal, then the fundamental holding structures, that is Adidaivika. Adidaivika is the Daiva is that protects all dharmic, functioning aspects of life. And then Adibodhika, its representation in the physical world. So, this understanding of what shaped Indian life across everything is extremely important. Today we recognize only Rajas and Tamas. We are not recognizing Sattva and how Sattva shaped Indian life. So that is the conflict. Now, I'll not take much time. I'll hand it over to Rahulji and then Shankar Garu. The critical thing is, why is all this important? Let's take some realistic examples. See, just the importance of sacred in Indian life is such that the moment you start something from there, there is a very high sense of acceptance from people with very less effort from the state. Let's take, Gandhian intervention. Gandhian intervention, you can argue to what extent it was successful or not, that is separate. But it was significantly successful. He became the unimpeached leader after 1920s. That much nobody can deny. And that did not happen with a strategy of execution. That happened because people saw him as renunciating. It's the renunciatory dimension that got the connection. Well, even after 1947, just a word from Lal Bahadur Shastri ji that we need upavas, or the Mondays must be a day of fasting. It connects to the sacred dimension of the individual. What is sacred? The sacred is a joy that comes from renouncing, that comes from moving away from the material. This is still valued in Indian society, and anything that starts, kind of succeeds. So many of you do not know, in 1924, when the Krishnarajasagar Dam was constructed, there was significant opposition. But finally, the invocation of the sacred dimension of the society is when the society changed overnight, and within a week, opposing farmers every day came to serve milk to the working people on the ground. So whenever we have invoked, even this, I've been to Kumbh twice, there is nothing like the state administration's absolute control that drives Kumbh. It is an inherent, connection with the sacred. That is what succeeds over there. As recently as few years back, Prime Minister's call for, renouncing a gas, the one gas cylinder was successful once again because there is a renouncing dimension, because the state invoked the sacred dimension. So I'm just giving this as a few examples. I can really make a big list of examples. But whenever you understand the cultural dimension of the society and public systems, not just policies, I'm talking about some, not even policies, some implementational aspects over here. But when an entire institution is configured for that, or an entire public system recognizes that, then the level of efficacy that comes from it, and not just efficacy. Efficacy is a very material thing. The overall joy experience that comes from it will be of a higher order. The sense of fulfillment will also be higher, which is actually diminishing, if you ask me, in the last few decades. The excessive anchoring on performance and consumption is actually diminishing the larger experience on the ground. So this is to just say that there's been some concepts. All this diverse. We can have a 3-hour session on how diversity is a consequence of this. Step by step, in an algorithmic fashion, we can explain. We can say why our sense of time is different from these concepts. And it's important to recognize that there is so much of a systemic organization of concepts and thought and systems Now there is a challenge to that because science, technology have brought in a new dynamic, which now for which we have to reconfigure our public systems, where science and technology pursuit is also there, and the joy distribution that we had is also not disturbed. So it's a time for complete reconfiguration of India, and it's a wonderful challenge. After all, challenges are what inspires us to do big things. While we have so far been enamored by technological challenges and scientific challenges, there is a lot of challenge, rather higher order challenge, in organizing systems and public systems. That. So with this, I'll request Rahulji to anchor. So he will bring the Loka dimension. While this is a textual or a conceptual representation, all of this can be experienced through the Loka, how life is organized, which is actually more accessible than the conceptual representation. And then, of course, Shankar Garu will focus on one dimension of this, which is the state.